Hi friends, Adam Kirtley here, Chaplain at Whitman. I hope you're doing well this week. It's been sort of an interesting week for me and my family over here on University Street near the campus. This weekend I was out with my family one evening, and my wife Jen and I started receiving a number of texts saying, "Are you all okay? Where are you? Have you seen what's happened to your car?" And so we sort of scurried back to the area, and as we pulled on to University Street, we realized that our neighborhood was in the midst of a blackout. Well, in fact, most of our neighbors were sitting on their on their porches or their steps with candles, and at the end of the street, we could see that emergency vehicles were on scene. There was a utility truck and the police and fire were all present, and there was a huge spotlight on our car. And as I got closer, I realized that we had parked beneath a massive old tree, and at some point that evening, the tree had dropped a limb, and the limb itself was almost the size of another tree. It was probably 20 feet long and maybe close to a foot in diameter. Had dropped this limb right on the top of our car, taking down some power lines as it went. As just really smashed the top of it, and I made my way to the police officer who was on the scene, and he wanted me to know that that it would be reflected in his report that this was an act of God. And then the next day, when I talked to the insurance claim adjuster, and as she was telling me that in fact that the car was totaled, it wasn't worth repairing, she also used the phrase that this was an act of God. Um, you know, as we think about this, the there is certainly a sense of gratitude that given sort of the violence and the destruction and sort of imagining how bad it could have been, that we're certainly quite grateful that no one was injured or hurt in the process of this natural miniature disaster. But it has me thinking about the way we use this term, something as an act of God. Um, I certainly don't put myself in the camp of folks who believe that God had anything to do with choosing to drop that limb from that tree on top of my car. Um, I think in a more serious context, I don't put myself in the camp of folks believing that God is responsible for the fires along the West Coast, or even the pandemic that's gripping our world right now. So it does beg the question: is there a sense in which there's a spiritual lens through which we sort of consider what these incredibly complicated and challenging days, especially these natural disasters that we're navigating? And I think the answer is yes. It is for me, and I would argue that even if you're a person who doesn't claim any sort of religious orientation to the world, that we all have a set of values by which we organize our lives, and some of us, those values have been informed through a organized faith journey, and for many of us, it's not the case. But there is a sense in which we can consider these days through that spiritual lens or that values-based lens, in which we are called to respond in a way that is compassionate, in a way that is generous, in a way that is mindful of and cognizant of those around us who are more vulnerable, those around us who are suffering to a greater extent. And I think that there's use to that. There's value in taking a moment to consider how, while everything around us seems to be turned upside down, that we can perhaps find a foothold to think about our orientation, our posture, our response to the chaos that's grounded in ideals of compassion, justice, generosity, and kindness. So those are just a few of my thoughts for you this week, my friends. I hope you are well. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I look forward to seeing you around soon.